The day of Malcolm Hayes's funeral arrived like a quiet storm. The sky above the city was pale, as if the sun did not want to shine too brightly on the moment. People came in suits and polished shoes, carrying grief in different forms. Some wore it openly, eyes wet and voices soft. Others wore it like armor, keeping their faces smooth and their murmurs low. The large hall where the reading would happen smelled faintly of lilies and old money. Crystal chandeliers hung overhead, throwing small pieces of light across the marble floor. Outside, the cameras blinked in the distance, waiting to catch every move. Inside, family and power waited together and not together. Malcolm Hayes had built an empire from nothing. He had grown up in a small, crowded apartment, watching. His mother worked 2 jobs, and his father disappeared more than he was present. As a young man, he learned that to survive meant being strong, that to win meant pushing the ones around you to the edge. The world saw the result: a billionaire, a pioneer, man who could build skyscrapers in months and rescue failing companies. With a single call, the world did not see the emptiness he had left behind in the lives of people he loved. His children knew something of it. The older ones had felt the pull of his expectations, the silent judgment if they didn't match his vision. His youngest son, Jamal, had felt something different. Distance, yes, but also silence that became a place where Jamal built his own small life. Away from the pressure of the public, raised quietly by his godmother in a modest home across town. Now, all the attention was on the big room. Malcolm's eldest daughter, Simone, sat with her hands clasped, eyes sharp and controlled. His oldest son, Darius, leaned forward in his chair, adjusting his cufflinks for the 3rd time. They had both been trained in boardrooms and speeches, in putting on the right face when the cameras rolled. They had seen the business wars, the careful negotiations, and the moments when their father's name opened doors without question. They believed they knew his mind. They believed they knew what he would do with the wealth he had built. The lawyers had their briefcases, their calm voices, their prepared remarks. The board members in designer suits whispered into earpieces, worried about how the market would react. Investors had already begun to murmur. The reporters sat with pens ready, knowing that a will reading could become a headline, and a headline could shift fortunes overnight. Jamal arrived late. He wasn't carrying a briefcase or a simple dark jacket, the kind that had seen more community center meetings than investment seminars. His godmother had insisted he come. "You have to be there, boy," she had said. "He left something for you. Don't let them take it away with their noise." Jamal had nodded. He had no idea what something meant. He only knew his father was dead. The world was watching. He felt small among the giant names, but he carried a crinkled envelope. In his pocket, the one his father had given him when they had met once, weeks before the funeral. Malcolm had been stiff and awkward, and Jamal had felt the same silence he had always felt. Then Malcolm had pulled him aside, kept his voice low, and said, "If I'm gone, you'll know what to do. Keep this safe. Don't show it unless the doors are closed and the room is full." Say these words. I have something he wanted read. Let me speak. He had handed Jamal the envelope, and Jamal had tucked it away, not understanding everything, but feeling trust like a thread finally offered. The reading began with the formalities everyone expected. The lawyer, a silver-haired man with soft eyes, spoke about Malcolm Hayes's legacy in the language of wealth and structure. He mentioned donations, corporate strategies, and the importance of continuity. He talked to the room about the will's primary instructions, and the audience leaned in, waiting for the parts that would affect them. The room hummed with the quiet energy of people waiting for their names, their shares, their influence to be confirmed. Then Jamal stood. It was not a scene anyone had planned. No one had put his name on the program, did not raise his hand. He simply walked slowly to the front, the envelope pressed between his fingers, and placed himself in the center of the hall with a stillness that broke through the polished noise. A murmur went up like a wave. Simone's eyes narrowed. Arias's hand tightened on his chair. The lawyers frowned. Someone whispered, "Who is that boy?" The cameras pivoted. Jamal's heartbeat was loud to him, but he kept his head up. He adjusted the edge of the envelope with both hands, and then he said, "I have something my father wanted read." asked me to bring it out now. The air changed. The thick confidence that had filled the room shifted to a silence that felt heavier than before. People stared. Some looked ready to shout him down. Others watched with curiosity, the kind that comes when the expected script breaks. The lawyer at the front moved toward him, opening his mouth to object, but Jamal held up a hand. He spoke so softly that half the room had to lean in just to catch the sound. He told me if I came here today and asked, you would listen. Said this letter was private, but it is part of the truth. Please let me read it. Simone stood. This is a stunt. You have no right. The will is being read. This is not the time. Jamal looked at her. He did not argue. He did not shout. Simply opened the envelope, revealing a single white sheet. Folded with care and started to read. His voice was quiet and it gained strength with each word. He did not say his father was perfect. He did not claim to know all the answers. He said, my father asked me to read this, said it is something he kept in his chest for a long time. He said it was a regret, and he wanted me to tell you honestly. He read Malcolm's words. They were written in a handwriting that looked like a mix of precision and trembling, a combination of a man who had controlled the world and one who, finally, was sharing something he had held too long. Malcolm began with the usual language of legacy. But then the letter changed. He spoke of a small part of the city, a neglected block where a community center had once supported kids, where a single mentor had helped a young woman, Jamal's mother, keep food on the table. He named the mentor a soft-spoken man called Elijah Carter, whose small business had been the heart of that neighborhood. Malcolm admitted that, years earlier, in a surge of ambition and fear, he had used his influence and a secret deal to push Elijah's business aside, to absorb the resources that made Malcolm's own early project succeed. He wrote that he had convinced others it was necessary for growth, that he had buried the story beneath patented deals and lawyer-drawn papers. He said he had watched from afar while the community slowed, while Elijah's influence faded, while the floor beneath the families he had once indirectly hurt became shaky. Jamal's voice cracked for a moment. He paused, took a breath, and kept reading. Malcolm had written that he never forgave himself. He had written that he had tried to make up for it with donations that never reached the people who needed them most, because those donations were filtered through complex systems that made the help invisible and impersonal. He said something that made several people in the room shift uncomfortably. He had used the name of progress to hide the cost of his own success. Then came the part that shocked everyone. Malcolm had written that the real heart of his legacy was not in the stocks or the skyscrapers. He had hidden a separate trust, funded with assets placed in quiet accounts, with instructions that those assets be used not to increase the holdings of his heirs directly, but to rebuild what had been broken. He had reserved the largest portion of those hidden funds for a project inside Elijah's old community, one that would include scholarships, a business incubator, community ownership of a new branch of his company, and a fund to pay back lost opportunity. The trust would also give the community a voice in future company decisions, a seat at the table that had once ignored them. But the most surprising thing was the condition. Malcolm wrote that the trust could only be activated if someone from his family stood in front of the world and spoke the truth. He wanted accountability without destruction. He wanted restoration, not just apology. He named Jamal the one to begin it. Jamal was to be the bridge. He was to present the truth honestly and to stand with the community as a partner, not a savior. He was to let the public know what had happened, to carry the shame and the hope, and to help lead the project forward. The letter ended with, "You want the real wealth of our name to matter? Listen. Let him speak. Then together, we rebuild more than I ever did alone." The room felt as if a wind moved through it. Some of the older board members shifted uncomfortably, looking between each other. Simone's face was hard, but behind it something like fear flickered. Darius's jaw tightened. The power they had expected seemed less solid. The lawyers whispered that this wasn't part of the official will, that it might not be binding. The reporters leaned forward. Sensing the story emerging like a sharp light from darkness, Jamal folded the letter carefully and held it against his chest. He looked around the room with a quiet weight in his gaze. "You asked me to say this?" he He made mistakes. He wants to fix it. He wants us to face the truth. Said the legacy isn't what you think. He said we can make it better if we start. Here, the silence lasted longer than any of them expected. Then a man in the back, low-level executive who had once worked under Malcolm and had seen some of the early moves, whispered, "Huaza." The moment Jamal finished reading, the room felt heavy with a mix of silence and electricity. People did not move right away. Some sat frozen like statues, trying to understand what they had just heard. Others whispered, quick and sharp, trying to turn the moment back into something neat and safe. Simone's hands tightened around the edge of her chair. Darius stared straight ahead, his face drained of color for the first time in years. The lawyers spoke softly to each other, words tumbling in polite confusion. A few of the board members exchanged looks that meant, without saying it, this changes everything. Jamal stood still for a moment, the letter folded in his hands. Like the only thing that kept him grounded. He had expected surprise. He had not expected the air to feel like a glass ceiling cracking. He glanced toward the back where his godmother sat, her expression steady, but her eyes wet. She had told him this is the moment. Speak and don't shrink. He trusted you. He felt the weight of that trust, heavier than any suit, deeper than any promise. He had not come here to hurt anyone. He had come because his father had asked. And the words in that letter were the only ones that felt like the truth he had been given. Simone rose first again. Her voice was sharp, the kind of voice that tried to fix a broken thing by tightening control. "This letter is not part of the official will," she said. "If he wanted to do something, he would have done it clearly. There are procedures. There are legal channels. This is a distraction. You're being used to create drama," Darius added. "We built this family name step by step. We didn't hide things. If there was a regret, it stays a regret. You can't turn it into a public performance and expect everyone to follow." He turned toward Jamal, his eyes hard. "What exactly do you want? Do you want to tear down what was built? Do you want to make us all look like liars?" Jamal's. The voice was quiet, but it had a steadiness now that surprised even him. "I don't want to tear anything. He didn't ask me to tear. He asked me to tell the truth. He wrote that the money he hid, he didn't hide it to punish. Hid it because he didn't know how to fix the past alone. He wanted the people who were hurt to help lead the fix. He wanted us to admit it and then rebuild better together." The room split into groups of reactions. One small group, mostly middle-level executives and a few community leaders who had been quietly brought in to attend, looked at each other, swallowing. A senior board member, polished and careful, stood slowly and said, "What was written? Is this real? Do you have proof that this was his handwriting? That this trust exists?" His tone tried to be calm, but under it was fear of what would happen if it was real, and fear of what people would think if they blocked it without. Knowing the full truth, Jamal opened his mouth to speak more, but the lead lawyer stepped in. "We will record this letter. We will examine its legal standing. The official will must proceed as written. Any side documents or letters will be evaluated separately. For now, we continue with the reading." He tried to put a professional shield between the shock and the normal order of things. The room took a breath and moved forward, but the forward movement was like walking with a limp. The will reading went on with less ease, less certainty.
"Elder?"
Jamal sat down. He felt the eyes that were not just watching, but weighing him. He felt some of the old, familiar shame slip into one that had lived under his skin because he had grown up thinking he was not enough for his father. This time, it was different. The shame was there, but beside it was something else. Clarity. He knew the path ahead, even if the first steps were unclear. After the reading, people drifted into smaller conversations. The siblings gathered in a tight circle near the back, their voices low but heated. Jamal stayed where he was, letting people move around him. A young journalist, the kind who still carried a notebook and believed the truth mattered more than a catchy headline, approached him shyly. "Can I talk to you?" she asked. Her name was Maya Brooks. She didn't come with the usual glare of the press. Her eyes held something like respect. Jamal nodded. They stepped aside near a side window, where light fell in thin bars. "I don't know everything," Maya said, "but I know when someone is not acting out for show." Your voice said something real. I want to help you get the story right. Not to turn it into a scandal for clicks, but to make sure people understand what your father wrote. Can I ask you questions later? Privately? Jamal looked at her then. At the letter in his pocket, he said, I don't want to hurt people. I don't want revenge. My father made mistakes. We wanted to fix them if we can. I need to know if the trust is real. I need to find proof of what he did and what he promised. Then I need to talk to the people who were affected. I need to make sure nobody uses this to hide something new. If you help me, I'll tell it like it is. No fake stories. Maya nodded. Okay, I'll look into the public records. I'll see if I can find anyone who remembers Elijah Carter or anything about that part of the city. I'll also see if anyone from your father's old team would talk. They might be scared, but some of them might also want the truth out. I'll keep it quiet at first. Jamal felt a small relief. Having one person who asked to help, not to attack, made the room feel a little less cold. He said, thank you. I don't even know where to start. My father didn't leave me instructions beyond this letter. Said the truth would come from looking deeper, from asking people who knew. Maya said, we start with the name, Elijah Carter. Who else knew him? Was there anyone who kept letters, records, even just stories? People talk. Sometimes the ones who are quiet now will speak if they trust you. She paused. And your godmother, what did she see? She might know things you don't. Jamal nodded again. He looked toward the room where his siblings continued their quiet arguing. He could hear snippets. Talk of lawyers, of forgeries, of a power play, of damaging the brand. It was the same old language used for fences around money and reputation. Jamal turned back to Maya and said, I need to find Elijah's family. I need to know who he helped. If I bring them the truth, they can decide if they want to be part of fixing it. Maya placed a hand gently on his arm. You don't have to do all of this alone. I'll help reach out. I'll help you get whoever is willing to talk into a room. But be careful. The ones who built the empire might try to stop you quietly. No. That letter is powerful, but it's also fragile. He agreed. Then she moved away to work quietly, and Jamal went to find his godmother. She had stepped outside where the air was cooler, holding her coat close. When he found her, she looked at him with a small smile. You did what he asked. No one can take that back now. He'll come at you with eyes full of anger, fear, and tricks. You keep your head. Keep the truth. Simple. Let the people who know the hurt speak too. Give them the space. He asked, do you think they'll believe me? Simone and Darius, they say it's a stunt. They'll try to bury it. I don't have their power. I don't even know if the trust is real yet. What if it's not real, and they use that to destroy everything? She touched his face lightly, the way a mother or grandmother would touch someone who had grown too fast in a moment. You see the difference between truth and story, boy. You didn't go looking for pain. The pain was there already. The letter says he wants to fix it. It gives you power. The rest we find out. You go slowly. You don't explode. You gather. When you have the pieces, you bring them out. You don't let them tell you the story. You show them the facts. That night, after the funeral, guests left the hall and went into their separate cars and private jets. Jamal did not go home. He rented a small room near the community he had only visited once as a child. He laid the letter on the small wooden table and opened his laptop. He pulled up what little he knew about Elijah Carter from the memory his godmother had of a name and a place. He typed carefully. The old neighborhood, the small storefronts. The community center that had once been full of children's laughter. The man who had been kind to his mother when she was young. He called one of the numbers his godmother had. For a woman who knew Elijah's sister, the voice on the other end was quiet and unsure at first. Who is this? She asked. My name is Jamal Hayes, he said. My father wrote a letter about Elijah Carter. I want to talk. I want to know what he did and what we can do to start fixing things. He kept his tone calm. He didn't try to sell it. He didn't try to defend the billionaire name behind him. He only spoke the truth as gently as he could. There was a long pause, then a soft, tired voice said, He helped my family when we were hungry. Elijah used to say the world was a circle. You take care of a piece, and it comes back to you. I don't know why a Hayes is calling, but meet you. Come tomorrow. Don't bring anyone else. Just come. Jamal felt a twist inside. He had started something. The letter had done more than shock a room. It had opened a door into a place he had only touched by memory. He sat back, the weight of the coming days settling in. He had to prepare. He had to build small, quiet bridges before the big ones burned. His father's name was loud and heavy. But now there was another name echoing, Elijah Carter. He would go meet the sister. He would listen. And then he would start gathering the pieces of the history that had been buried for too long. The secret trust was not just about money. It was about truth. And truth, once spoken, could not be put back into a dark drawer. The next morning, Jamal stood outside a small yellow house on the edge of the city. It was quiet, with plants growing wild in the front yard and an old wooden bench by the door. The house looked tired but warm, like it had seen many years of stories. Jamal adjusted his jacket and checked the letter in his pocket once more. His heart was beating faster than normal, not from fear, but from something deeper. Like he was about to walk into a part of history that had been hidden from him all his life. The door opened slowly. A woman in her late 70s stepped out. Her silver hair was tied back, and her eyes looked sharp but kind. She didn't smile, but she nodded once and stepped aside. "You must be Malcolm's boy," she said. "Yes, ma'am," Jamal replied. "I'm Jamal Hayes. You must be Miss Ruby." "That's right," she said. "Come in." Inside, the house smelled like cinnamon and old books. Family pictures lined the shelves, some in color, some black and white. In one frame, Jamal noticed, a younger version of the woman standing next to a man with kind eyes and a strong jaw. He knew without asking that it was Elijah. Carter. Ruby sat down on a soft armchair and pointed for Jamal to take the seat across from her. "You said on the phone you had something to tell me," she said. "Something about my brother." Jamal took a deep breath and pulled out the letter. He placed it carefully on the coffee table between them. "This was written by my father before he passed. He asked me to read it during the will reading. He said he made a mistake, that he hurt Elijah, that he built part of his empire by pushing your brother's business aside." Ruby looked at the letter for a long time before picking it up. Her hands were steady, but her eyes shimmered with old pain. She read silently for several minutes. Then very gently she placed it back on the table and looked at Jamal. "My brother wasn't a rich man," she said, "but he was honest. He started that community center with his own hands. He helped young people open small businesses. He made sure no kid went hungry if he could help it. He believed in people. When the funding dried up and the city pulled back, he kept going. But when your father's company expanded into this area, something changed. Elijah lost his lease. His name was erased from a project he helped create." He didn't complain, but I saw it in his eyes. A light went out. Jamal listened without interrupting. Word felt like another piece of the puzzle falling into place. "He told me once," Ruby continued, "that power doesn't always wear a crown. Sometimes it wears a suit and a smile and says, 'It's just business.' But he never stopped believing that someone would one day make it right." Jamal leaned forward. "I think that's why my father gave me this letter. He didn't know how to fix it himself. He created a trust money and land mint to go back to this community. But the trust only activates if I come forward with the truth, if I work with the community to use it right. That's why I'm here. I want to understand what was lost. I want your help, if you're willing." Ruby stared at him for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, Jamal. If you're serious, we'll talk. But this won't be easy. People don't always want the truth. Some folks around here still remember. The day Elijah had to close the doors, some still carry that pain." "I understand," Jamal said. "Want to listen first." Over the next few days, Ruby introduced Jamal to several elders and the neighborhood shop owners, retired teachers, and a man who once taught art classes at the center. They were cautious at first, but when Jamal showed them the letter and spoke with honesty, their walls began to lower. They remembered Elijah clearly. They remembered how the center gave out free meals on weekends and how kids would stay after school to finish homework in the library. They also remembered how it ended. Suddenly, quietly, with no warning. New developers came in, buildings changed, and the community was pushed aside. One woman, Miss Lena, said, "I always wondered why Elijah never spoke up. I asked him once and he said, if I speak, people will think I'm bitter. But if I stay silent, maybe one day the truth will find its voice. Looks like that voice is you." Jamal took notes, recorded stories, and made copies of old photos and documents they shared. One retired city employee even showed him a forgotten blueprint of the original community center with Elijah's name on it as the founder. Back in the city, things were shifting. Simone and Darius were not silent. They had started a quiet legal push to discredit Jamal's letter. They filed a motion to challenge its authenticity, claiming Malcolm's signature could not be verified and that Jamal was using a personal note to make public moves that harmed the family's image. Headlines began to appear, first small, then louder. Some reporters painted Jamal as a brave truth-teller. Others called him a confused young man being used by people who wanted to shake the empire. Jamal stayed focused. With Maya's help, he gathered more documents. They located one of Malcolm's old assistants, retired now, living in a small beach town. When they contacted him, he was hesitant, but Jamal didn't beg. He just said, "I think my father was trying to fix something. I don't want to ruin anyone. I just want the truth." That night, the assistant sent him an email with an attachment. Inside was a scanned copy of a ledger, a list of internal notes from years ago. On one page, dated 15 years earlier, was a note. "Carter Projector Move Association quietly. Advise legal to reassign ownership," Malcolm said. "Necessary for launch." It was small, but it was proof. Maya looked at the document and whispered, "This changes everything." With Ruby's help, Jamal planned a community meeting. It would be open to everyone: elders, young people, business owners, teachers, even the press. 8. Booked a hall, the same one where Elijah had once hosted a graduation party for local students. Ruby sent word through the churches. Maya helped prepare a short video showing old photos, the original blueprint, and a voice recording from one of Elijah's close friends. The night of the meeting, the hall was full. Some came with hope, others came with doubts, but they came. Jamal stood in front of them and said, "My name is Jamal Hayes. My father built many things, but he also broke something along the way. Didn't tell anyone while he was alive. But he left me this letter, and in it, he asked me to tell the truth and help restore what was lost. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness. I'm here to listen, to learn, and to offer what he set aside to be used by you, not just for you." He shared the letter, the ledger, the blueprint. The room was quiet. Then Miss Lena stood and said, "That boy's telling the truth." And the room clapped, not loud, but slow and steady. Not for show, but for healing. In the back, Ruby wiped her eyes. The truth had found its voice. Outside, the media waited. But inside, something stronger was happening. Jamal didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Tonight he knew this. The past was no longer hidden, and the future had just begun to open its doors. The next morning, Jamal stood by the window of his small rented room, watching the sun slowly rise over the old rooftops of the community. His phone buzzed nonstop. Messages poured in, some supportive, others doubtful, and a few sharp with anger. News channels had picked up clips from the community meeting. Some praised his courage. Others accused him of shaking up a stable empire. But Jamal didn't focus on the noise. Kept reading the same line from his father's letter. "Truth is not meant to destroy, is meant to rebuild." Those words gave him strength. Later that day, Maya met him with a small folder in hand. She looked both excited and nervous. "I think we found the location of the trust," she said. "There's a private foundation listed under a different name. Brightstone Legacy Fund. It was registered by a holding company your father created over 20 years ago. Quietly. No public link to Hayes Industries. But the address matches your father's private law firm." Jamal leaned in. "Is there money in it?" Maya nodded. "It's not just money. Property deeds, land, shares in smaller companies that feed into Hayes Industries. It's not just a side account. It's the heart of something bigger, something your father was building outside the spotlight." Jamal felt a mix of shock and awe. Why would he hide it like this? Maybe he knew it would be questioned. Maybe he was waiting for the right time the right person, to bring it forward. Maya replied. The confirmation changed everything. The trust was real. The documents were real. And now Jamal had a choice. He could take it all straight to the public, or bring it carefully into the open with the people it was meant for. That afternoon, he returned to Ruby's house with the news. She sat quietly as he explained, then nodded slowly. I told you, she said. He felt the weight, your father. Couldn't say it out loud, but he tried to leave a path. And now it's your feet on that path, Ruby suggested they form. A small planning counselor, a group of trusted people from the community who could review the documents and decide how to manage the trust. She didn't want it to become another top-down gift. If this is going to help us, she said, it has to belong to us, not just in name. In truth. So Jamal began calling everyone he had met in the past few weeks. Miss Lena, the retired art teacher, the small shop owner, the local youth coach, and even a high school student named Jaden, who ran a tiny food pantry from his mother's garage. They met in the back room of an old library, sitting around folding tables and drinking tea from paper cups. Jamal laid out the facts. This fund can support scholarships, rebuild the community center, offer small business grants, create ownership in companies, but it can't work unless you lead it. I'm here to help, not to take charge. The group listened. Some asked hard questions. What if the family tried to stop them? What if it created more problems than it solved? What if people didn't believe them? Jamal answered with honesty. There's risk, but there's also hope, and that's more than we've had in a long time. The council agreed to move forward. Meanwhile, the pressure from Simone and Darius grew stronger. They called an emergency board meeting of Hayes Industries. Rumors spread that they wanted to remove Jamal's name from all public discussions and distance the company from the legacy scandal, as some news outlets called it. Jamal was invited barely. He arrived at the towering glass building downtown, walking past security guards who whispered to each other. In the boardroom, everything felt cold and perfect. Backed chairs, polished wood, and giant screens showing graphs and numbers. Simone sat at the head of the table. Darius flanked her. The other board members sat in tight silence. Simone spoke first. Jamal, your recent actions have raised serious questions. Investors are nervous. Public trust is shaken. We've brought in legal counsel. There's a proposal to cut all official ties between Hayes Industries and the so-called Brightstone Legacy Fund. Jamal remained calm. You can try, but the documents are clear. The trust is real. It holds assets legally connected to the company, and the letter, whether you like it or not, was written by our father. He chose to include the truth. I'm not acting alone. I'm working with the people this company forgot. Darius slammed a folder shut. You're ruining everything he built. Jamal looked at him. No, I'm finishing what he started. Then something unexpected happened. One of the older board members, Mr. Chen, slowly raised his hand. He was known for saying little, but when he spoke, people listened. I worked with Malcolm for 30 years, Mr. Chen said. I watched him grow this empire, and I watched him change. Toward the end, he asked strange questions. About impact, about regret. I never understood it until now. I believe the boy. I think turning our backs on this truth would be the real mistake, others murmured. Another member, a woman named Olivia, added, our company has a chance to become something greater, not just richer, but right. Maybe this is the direction we need. The vote was close, but enough members chose to support a formal review of the trust. Hayes Industries would not fight it publicly for now. The news leaked quickly. Hayes family divided over hidden trust, one headline said. Another read, youngest son challenges billionaire legacy and wins first round. Back in the community, hope grew. The planning council moved fast. They announced a day of listening, an open event where anyone from the community could come share ideas, dreams, and needs. They held it at a local high school gym. Hundreds came, melders, teenagers, mothers, and even former employees of the old center. Jamal walked among them, listening, learning. He never stood on a stage. He stayed close to the floor where real voices rose. Miss Lena shared a plan for a new reading room for children. A man named Thomas spoke of rebuilding Elijah's small business incubator. Jaden, the high schooler, pitched a youth-run cafe. That would also serve free breakfast to kids before school. The ideas came alive like seeds in good soil. Later that evening, Ruby stood at the front and said, "This is what Elijah dreamed of. Not handouts, not pity. Power shared, voice by voice." Jamal looked around, his heart full. For the first time, he felt what his father might have felt when building his empire. But this time, it was rooted in people, not profits. He knew the journey wasn't over. Simone and Darius would keep pushing, and the company might still try to twist the narrative. But truth had already moved. It was growing roots in places where the sun was finally starting to shine that night. As Jamal walked home under the soft glow of streetlights, he thought about the name Hayes not as a brand, but as a bridge. One built between what was and what could be. And somewhere deep inside he whispered, "We're not done yet." Weeks passed, but the energy in the community did not slow down. In fact, it only grew stronger. The once-forgotten neighborhood had come alive again, like a tree that had survived a long winter and finally felt the warmth of spring. People, who hadn't spoken to each other in years, were now planning together, sharing ideas, fixing old walls, repainting shops, and reopening places that had been closed for too long. The Brightstone Legacy Fund, the hidden trust Jamal had revealed, had now become a living thing. It wasn't just a document anymore. It was a movement. The Planning Council had carefully organized the fund to support three main things: education, small business growth, and restoring public spaces. But instead of controlling everything themselves, they created community panels. Anyone from the SVE neighborhood could apply to join and have a say. No voice was too small. Jamal spent most of his days walking through the streets, meeting people, answering questions, and making sure everything stayed open and honest. He had started keeping a notebook in his pocket where he wrote down ideas, concerns, and names of people who wanted to help. His role wasn't to lead with power, it was to walk beside others, to keep his father's final wish alive. But not everything was easy at Hayes Industries. Simone and Darius still tried to slow things down. They had now hired a second legal team to try to take control of some of the properties in the trust. They claimed the assets were taken from the company without board approval, even though the records showed otherwise. They gave interviews saying things like, "We support community growth, but not at the cost of our family's name, and we want the truth, but we also want fairness." Their words were smooth, but their actions were sharp. Jamal refused to fight them in public. Instead, he stayed focused on doing the work. "The best answer is progress," he told Maya one day. "If we keep moving forward, people will see the truth without us having to shout it." Maya smiled. "They already are." "You've done something rare, Jamal. You took a secret and turned it into something good." Still, Jamal sometimes felt tired. The work was endless, and the pressure heavy. But every time he started to feel overwhelmed, someone would say something that reminded him why he was doing this. Like when an older man stopped him near the park one morning and said, "I never thought I'd live to see this." Elijah would be proud. Or when a young girl handed him a drawing of a rebuilt community center, complete with a library, playground, and music room. She wrote, "Thank you" in colorful letters at the bottom. Those moments gave him the strength to keep going. One afternoon, I had Jamal over for tea. As they sat on her porch, watching kids ride bikes up and down the street, she handed him a small wooden box. "Elijah left this with me," she said. "He told me to give it to someone who understood his dream. I think that person is you." Jamal opened the box slowly. Inside there were old photos, letters, and a faded notebook. In one letter, Elijah had written, "If we want to build something that lasts, we have to plant seeds that we may never get to see grow. But someone will, and that's enough." Jamal closed his eyes for a moment. The words felt like a bridge between past and future. Elijah hadn't just worked for his time, he had worked for a better tomorrow. And now, that tomorrow was beginning to take shape. Meanwhile, news of the Brightstone project spread beyond the city. Articles appeared in national newspapers with titles like "Son of Billionaire Restores His Father's Hidden Promise," and from silence to action, the story of a quiet revolution. Some business leaders reached out, curious about how they could support. Others watched quietly, waiting to see if it would last. One day, Jamal received an invitation to speak at a national youth summit. At first, he didn't want to go. He felt more comfortable in the neighborhood than on a big stage, but Ruby encouraged him. Sometimes, she said, the truth needs to travel farther. Not to show off, but to inspire. So Jamal went. On the stage, in front of hundreds of young people, he didn't give a fancy speech. He simply told the story about his father's regret, about Elijah's quiet strength, about the community that chose to rise together. He ended by saying, "Legacy isn't about money. It's about what you do with the truth when it finds you. My father hid a secret. I shared it, and now the people are building something better than any one man ever could." The audience stood in applause, not because of fame, but because the story felt real, gave them hope that change could begin anywhere. Back home, things continued to grow. The new community center opened its doors with a celebration that brought the entire neighborhood together. There were balloons, food stands, music, and laughter. Inside, kids explored the reading rooms, teens signed up for coding classes, and elders joined craft workshops. On the wall near the entrance, there was a small plaque that read, "In honor of Elijah Carter, whose light never dimmed." Jamal stood quietly beside it, hand resting on the wall. Maya stood next to him, camera in hand. "You made it happen," she said. He shook his head. "We made it happen." Later that week, Hayes Industries released a public statement. For the first time, Simone and Darius agreed to step back from fighting the trust. The company would officially support the Brightstone projects as a partner, a leader, but a contributor. They still had their reservations, but the growing support from the public media, investors had shown them that fighting would only damage their reputation further. In a rare moment, Simone called Jamal privately. "I still don't agree with how you did it," she said, "but I can't deny what's happening." "You were right about one thing. He did change in the end," Jamal replied. "I don't want to win. I just want to do what's right. For him, for all of us." There was silence on the other end. Then, quietly, Simone said, "Take care of the name. It means something now." As the days rolled on, the project continued to grow, not just in buildings or budgets, but in belief. People who had once felt forgotten now felt seen. Children who had never heard of Elijah Carter now knew his name. And Jamal, once a quiet boy in the shadow of a powerful father, had become something more, not a billionaire, not a businessman, but a bridge between truth and change. One evening, as the sun set behind the buildings, Jamal sat on the same porch where Ruby had first opened the door to him. The streets were alive with voices, and the neighborhood lights began to flicker on. He smiled and whispered to himself, "We did it, Dad. We didn't just fix the past. We're building the future." Somewhere in the soft wind that passed through the trees, it felt like the past nodded back, not with guilt, but with peace.